Good afternoon. Welcome to the press center of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine. Here is our weekly update of the situation in the operations area of the joint forces from 12th to 18th November 2018. During the last week, enemy continued to destabilize situations in the deterrence area of the Russian armed aggression in the Donbass. Russian occupation forces not only increased the number of violations, but also, in many occasions, used different calibers of mortars. In general, over the past week, from 12th to 18th November, the Ukrainian defenders' position fell under provocative fire by Russian occupation troops for more than 91 times. From the beginning of the previous week, enemy used grenade launchers, air defense guns, heavy machine guns, small arms, and other infantry weapons. What is more, in most cases, enemy used 82 and 120 mm mortars to shell positions of our defenders. Enemy also one time used 122 artillery. On November 12th, more than 20 mines of 82 mm caliber were used against positions of our defenders near Troitske and Zolote 4. On November 13th, enemy shelled our positions, firing 10 82 mm mines. Moreover, during 14th November, enemy fired 40 82 mm mines against positions of our defenders near Krymske, Starый Aidar, Hutir Vilny, and Shastya. According to the information of the Joint Operations Staff, at least 43 120 mm and almost 182 mm mines were fired against our positions during November 15th. Later, on November 16th, Russian occupation troops fired 15 120 and 82 mm mines, and more than 70 mines were fired against our positions on November 17th. What is more, on November 18th, enemy used 122 mm artillery to shell our positions near Zholobok. The situation in the operations area, thus, is under full control of the Joint Operation Forces. Our servicemen opened fire in response to suppress enemy activity by using infantry weapons and strictly adhering to Minsk agreements. As the result of the activity of the Russian occupation forces, 4 of our servicemen were wounded in action. We want to inform with grief that 1 serviceman was killed in action as the result of Russian armed aggression against Ukraine. We express our sincerest condolences to the relatives and the loved one of our deceased defender, as well as his combat comrades. According to the information from the Intelligence Directorate of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine, Russian Occupation Command continues to use temporarily occupied territories of Donetsk and Luhansk oblasts as a military range to dispose of outdated and to test new types of ammunition and weapon systems. During November, regular consignment of ammunition were sent to resupply 1st and 2nd Corps of the Armed Forces of Russian Federation. But most of the artillery ammunition which was sent were outdated, non-usable, and damaged by corrosion due to the storage on the open air. Russian Occupation Command had decided to dispose 2/3 of this ammunition by detonation. Moreover, Russian Federation uses combat actions in east of the Ukraine to test new types of communication means, electronic warfare, and signal intelligence systems. Thus, new types of electronic warfare systems such as Repellent 1 and Silog are being tested against unmanned aerial vehicles. Russian Federation continues to disseminate disinformation in the attempt to conceal its involvement in the armed aggression against Ukraine. In particular, Russian propaganda is making significant efforts to annihilate Russian soldiers and officers allegedly killed while fighting in Syria. At the same time, it is actively concealed that the most of the so-called heroically killed Russians in Syria were actually killed and buried under someone else's names in the temporarily occupied territories of Donetsk and Luhansk oblasts as the part of the 1st and the 2nd Army Corps of the Russian Armed Forces. In this regard, the Russian Occupation Command informs false information about the date, place and circumstances of the deaths of their soldiers and the place of their burial or cremation of the bodies to the families of the dead. As for other news, our engineer units continue to perform demining activity in the Joint Forces Operations Area. During the last week, our engineer units checked about 47 hectares of the territory and disposed of 345 items of explosive remnants. In general, since 2014, our engineer units checked about 4,110 hectares in Donetsk and Luhansk oblasts and disposed of more than 253,900 items of explosive remnants. Moreover, more than 17 kilometers of railroads and more than 1,450 kilometers of roads and routes were cleared by our engineer units. That's all information for now. Thank you for your attention. Captain Sharavara Mykhailo from the Press Center of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine.